Frank works at a firm, but he really wants to write the next great classic. And he has just a story. But why is he struggling to get his work published? True, he believes that once the first draft is written, he's 80% done. Perhaps a bit of proofreading is needed, but the agency and publishing house will deal with that. After all, the idea is great. Alas, no responses. In a moment of what he considered weakness, he allowed his coworker to read his work. "I like the story," says his coworker, "but the writing, it's a bit crude." Crude? How dare he criticize his work, his style, his self-expression? Yes, there might be some typos, said Frank, returning to his desk, thinking he wasn't crude. He knew Crude, and his writing wasn't crude. Crude was his friend Kyle. He recalls hanging out with his old high school friends at an upscale restaurant where he frequents regularly. After a few drinks, one of his friends, Kyle, who had recently returned from Europe, was boasting about all the adventures and sexual escapades he had. "Oh man, you should have seen the babes I was with. They were sexy. Big tits, big ass, if you know what I mean." Kyle made some grotesque gestures. Frank understood what he meant. There wasn't a lot of subtlety to it, but they were at a nice restaurant, and the way Kyle was speaking was making him uncomfortable. He looked around to see if the other patrons were watching. Kyle was crude. Frank knows that. How can his coworker use the same word to describe his writing? Well, like crude oil or crude sugar, you could say that Kyle's behavior, Frank's writing, and even my drawing here are undeveloped. It's raw, unrefined, unpolished. While it's in the natural state, it is lacking the completeness that a quality product should have. When we bring that understanding to the word crude and relate it to our writing, even though we've poured our heart and soul into a piece of work, without the revision necessary, it could indeed come across as crude. But Frank's writing is not a lost cause. Crude is not completely negative. Crude writing can be strong in some sense. It doesn't leave room for interpretation. It's not poetic, sure, but it's clear and blunt, often to the line of offensiveness. Nevertheless, crude writing gets the point across in a direct way. Crude writing is rarely misunderstood. It might be abrasive or rough, but the concept is there in its purest form. Crude writing is something Frank can work with. Crude writing is better than nothing written. The problem is with Frank's expectations. He wants to have his work published. He wants it to be regarded as a classic. He wants to have his work within a certain space. And it's in that act of putting something where it doesn't yet belong, like Kyle's talk about his lewd acts in an upscale restaurant, that makes Frank's writing crude. When comparing his work against those who have spent months and years refining their stories, using the same guidelines to judge, it simply doesn't meet the standard. There is certainly a place for crude writing. In fact, for many, it might be a style that works for their personality. There are people out there who would happily consume crude sugar, but most people would rather eat candy. If you want your writing to appeal to the largest number of readers, then embracing the fact that you write crudely might not be the best place to start. Readers look for books and articles the same way shoppers buy groceries, and when shopping, you'd rarely find crude sugar and chocolate bars in the same aisle. The same goes with writing. Crude writing can live happily on a blog or a Facebook wall, just like how Kyle's sexual stories can live happily at a bar. Yet, it is when we want our work and ourselves to reach a certain level, like athletes or actors preparing for a competition or performance, we need to put in the work to polish and refine. Frank is proud of his work. It's a personal piece pouring freshly out of him, yet he did not see the crudeness. He is inexperienced, and the work is too close to him. He goes through it again, but doesn't know what to fix or improve on. This is a frustrating place to be. Crudeness comes from lack of self-awareness. It often needs not only someone to point it out, but someone with the patience to offer suggestions after they pointed it out. It's having that direction to offer that makes someone a good editor for writing and life. It has to be a mutual progression. If Frank confronted Kyle in the restaurant and told him he was being crude, He would have reacted the same way Frank did after his coworker read his writing, defensively. In order to overcome crudeness, one needs help from someone who has experienced confronting and overcoming the process themselves. But most importantly, they need to want to be helped. Nobody can make you write a second draft if you think the first one is perfect. Had anyone ever said that your writing was crude? Let me know how you dealt with that in the comments below. And if you're interested in more videos about writing and the creative process, don't forget to subscribe.